I brought on some extra people today, because all of Twitch is in a humbug about this this situation with Vaush and Vaush and Hassan being banned. And the conversation seems to be one of two things. Either cracker is an ethnic slur.
Oh, he said it.
Well, no, I mean, like, according to the TOS, it's whether or not we're saying it in a derogatory manner towards someone.
Huh.
Essentially, it's the exact same rule. It's the exact same rules as the N-word, with the exception that the N-word can be said only by black people. So it's the same rules. So if you're using
even if a black person says it in a derogatory way,
if they say it in like a derogatory way towards someone designed to defame or hurt them, like, that's TOS violation.
So yesterday maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Fnatic like broke the fuck out of TOS. Now, there's the rules, and then there's how they're going to be applied, right? Yeah. And Twitch is never going to go after a black person for doing that. Like, it's just not going to happen, because black people are a protected class and whiteness really isn't. But apparently it is, according to TOS now. At least to some degree. Yeah, so I mean, it's very interesting. But the conversation seems to be either it is an ethnic slur, and because it's an ethnic slur, it's okay that they got banned, and like that in order for them to be logically consistent with their censorship ideals, which, you know, I get. And then the other one is that it's not an ethnic slur because white people have privilege and power or some dumb shit, right? And apparently all white people are the same because their whiteness grants them magical fucking fairy unicorn dust powers. We need to protect the existence of the white race. I mean, what? Hold on. What are you responding to? It's a slippery slope. Nobody cares about slurs except for black people and LGBTQ.
I'm responding to you saying that black people are a protected class. So I was saying, well, we need to protect white people too.
Yeah, I mean, I would just not protect any class based off of their fucking identifiers. Like, I would protect the sovereignty of the individual. But I want to have a bigger discussion.
Women.
What's that?
We can all agree that we should protect women.
It's kind of say all women except nurses.
Yeah, not nurses. No. I don't know. I don't know if I'm that conservative. I don't know that I believe that women need any special treatment.
I won't say much here.
I don't know. Like, I'm of two minds about it. You know what I mean? Like, I recognize that there's, you know, genetic differences on large between men and women. Or I wouldn't say genetic, well, obviously genetic, but biological differences, right? And so these lead to certain things, and these are characteristics for which, if we're going to legislate, we can legislate some differences there. While at the same time, I don't want to do anything that hampers the rights of men or women. And so often when I hear protect, I very quickly am suspicious of what that means, because it more often than not means doing something that privileges the status of one, which thus hampers the opportunities of the other, or it doesn't work, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, the practice and the policy is something I'm very skeptical of. Let them protect themselves. Fuck them. Well, no, the future is anarchy. I'm happy the Vaush and Hassan are censored so they can experience the cancellation. Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, I don't know. We'll get into it. I think. Oh my God, Alesto's talking to Shadow Warden. Okay, that's fine. I'm of two minds about it, right? So we'll definitely get into it as this goes on. Yeah, and that's another thing too that I want to talk about. Like, you know, where do our principles lie in terms of fucking commies getting ousted? I don't know, but I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee and a glass of water, And I would love for Mark to open up on how he feels about it, because Mark, unlike myself, was not in the debate last night on Prime Case. So I think a lot of you already have a pretty strong inkling on how I feel about free speech and things of that nature, because I kind of spoke about them in regards to the C word last night. So I'd love to hear from Mark while I get a glass of water and some coffee.
I don't know, maybe it's just my privilege, but I don't give a shit about slurs. I can hardly muster up enough energy to care about this topic to talk on it. I think it's a pretty simple issue. Like, free speech is either free or it's not. If you have any limits on it, then you don't believe in free speech, with the exception of actionable death threats, because it's action and not just speech. Obviously, slander and libel, if you can prove damages, should be punished as well. But, if you're just in a room talking with a couple people and you just, like, shit talk someone, I don't think you should be sued. Yeah, basically, it's just free speech.
I think most of us agree that, like, I think all of us are like free speech absolutists, and like as long as you're not like doing like a call to action or action.
Yeah, that's where I draw the line, right? I draw the line at fraud.
Like, before I don't care.
Yeah, I mean my lines are fraud, or libel and slander, all of which you must prove damages, and then direct and actionable violence. A call for direct and actionable violence. I think what a call to direction, I think that definition changes when you're talking about a public figure, and also the platform. But I'm afraid to see how that gets drawn out legally. So like, if I'm a normal guy talking about a normal guy, I think you need to be like, hey, go murder that guy right there, right now. Right? Like, I think you need to point at that or you need to be like, this person that's going to be at Starbucks at Tuesday at 6 a.m. Right? But I think if you're like, let's say a celebrity talking about another person that is a known public figure on, let's say, a podcast, I don't think you need, like, I think just saying we need to kill that person, I think that's enough without you having to actually say where they are and the specific time that it needs to be done. Right? Because I think like the likelihood of me being like, somebody's got to kill President Obama when you're like a normal person, right? And you're not talking to any audience, like, I don't really see that as direct and actionable. But like, if you're a popular person with a massive audience and you're talking about the president, maybe not the president because he's got a fuck ton of security, but you know what I mean? But I think that's a thing, you know what I mean? So I think that line can get blurred.
Even then, I think it has to do, like, I'm not sure, like, I'm not a legal scholar or anything like that, and it'd be nice if we had one in here, but it probably has to do with the fact that, like, if you have a lot of social capital, you're using that as like leverage to create so it's like more likely that your quote unquote call to action becomes more of a actionable violence because you have like a bigger platform. So it might have to do with that.
So it seems there's questions in chat about what's going on. So a mod of two mods technically, but one mod originally of Hassan's got banned because he was insulting a white person very heavily and called him a cracker. Right? Now, in the discussion about that, both Hassan, another one of Hassan's mods, and Vaush all came out using the cracker word as a means to insult white people. Right? Like was yelling about it, was saying it in a derogatory manner at other people, using it as an insult. Yes, Deflux. Vaush was permabanned. Hassan got a 1-week ban.
Yeah, Vaush's ban is probably gonna get removed anyway. Like
Vaush was like on his 3rd strike or something, or like Twitch is weird because Twitch doesn't enforce the rules equally. ever.
Yeah.
And there's no 3 strikes rule or anything like that. Like YouTube gives you a 3 strikes rule, and your strikes go away after a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but he's probably gonna get back. They're not.
He'll get appealed. He'll be like,
Well,
hey,
you saw
I
how
didn't know.
Hassan and 3 others were banned for the word. Like, yeah, we're gonna have to gingerly palpate this topic.
I'm only tiptoeing around the word cracker because I'm thinking for a moment, like, how am I using it? Because I don't want to lose my fucking channel. Right? Like, you know what I mean? That's the only.
Completely fine. I'm just being a bit silly.
Wellspring
Like,
has the position that cracker is not an ethnic slur, so I would love to discuss.
Yeah. So let's open up the floor first, right? Is cracker an ethnic slur? And who wants to start? Who wants to open the discussion?
I mean, I'll go, I guess. So the reason I think it's an ethnic slur, basically, it's a slur based on somebody's racial identity, and it's normally targeted towards white people, and sometimes even white people of lower socioeconomic status. So it's obviously an ethnic slur, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't see how it couldn't be, but
let's look at before we even get into it. I'm just curious because I didn't even think about it. But what is? Let's look at the actual definition of an ethnic slur, right? Like let's see. You know what I mean? Like let's just see from dictionary.com. So, well, this is slur. I don't want slur.
Didn't Aziz Ansari have a bit about like you can make anything a slur? It's just in how you say it. Like, come here, you Kit Kat.
Instead.
What's that? Does anybody have a good definition from a dictionary?
Yeah, I'll try to pull up something more classic.
Yeah.
It's
use
a
Urban
slur
Dictionary.
on someone's race or language, a person slur.
Hold on. If you're gonna share something, stream it in Discord so we can read along. I don't think the hard R matters in the usage of the term cracker.
So now here's the real. Yeah, that's a good question. Since the ER is worse, are we supposed to say cracker now? Or?
No, that's not a good question. It's a meme. Yeah. So Deflux is like, isn't white trash more of an ethnic slur? See, here's the thing about white trash. The reason I think white trash isn't an ethnic slur in the way that cracker may be, I'm kind of on the fence about it, is that white trash is delineated from redneck and hillbilly, right? White trash is not just an attack on the racial identity of the person, but is also an attack on the behavior of the individual, right? So someone that is considered white trash is not, it's saying they're poor and it's saying they're white, but it's also saying that they do trashy things, right? Which is to say that they are not clean, that they may or may not have a broken down car in their front lawn, that their house is fucking disgusting, that they don't have any couth when they go out in public, that they lack, they lack like a certain honorable demeanor when engaging with other people, right? So it's like there's a difference between a redneck and white trash, right? Like a redneck is a good old country boy from the middle of the mountains with bib overalls on and a giant beard, and he might look gross, but that doesn't mean that he won't hold the door open for you, and that doesn't mean that he won't say yes sir and yes ma'am when he's talking to individuals, right? And a redneck from out in Appalachia that's not white trash isn't going to say the Lord's name in vain, right? Like they have a certain, so there's something tied to the behavior and the demeanor of the person. And so it begins to separate itself partially from just being a racial distinction. Whereas like the N-word, right? Both historically and currently.
About the N-word?
I don't know. I think the N-word has very broadly been used and is often designed, right, to target the entirety of the race. Some people may believe that the N-word is a certain behavioral characteristic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like the only people that I really see that like use it in that way are usually white racists trying to justify their usage of calling people the N-word and being like, no, there's good ones, right? Like, this is about the only time I ever really hear anybody like try and say that the N-word is like about a certain characteristic of behavior or older black people.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Because the first person I heard that from was Chris Rock on his whole bit. There is like when he said there's black people and there's the N-word.
King of the internet said white trash are white people that use the N-word.
Oh my god.
He's not wrong.
So do we have a definition already that we agree on what is an ethnic slur and what is a slur or
Yes, we have a definition.
All right.
Because the definition is composed of 2 words.
Can we get it?
So,
Can we get it on screen?
There
Like share
will be no need because these are 2 very short definitions. And
Okay.
You have to combine them. There's no combined definition in the dictionary.
Yeah, that's what I noticed when I was looking it up. Yeah.
Which there is maybe some, postmodern dictionary that has it, but I'd rather not. So classically, a slur is anything that is disparagingly or insultingly talking about somebody. If you talk about somebody disparagingly, and you're describing their behavior, you're slurring them in this classical sense.
Right.
Okay? Which is, there was another meaning, which is slurred speech, but we ignore all of that, obviously. Disparaging remark, aspersion, sorry. Okay, and racial, we all understand what that means, okay? It's arbitrary inherent categories, okay? According to the left, at least.
Well, I mean, but by that definition, racial slur accounts for basically all of them. I mean, anything like I could simply make up a word, you know what I mean? Like, and also, I also wonder, does the historical context matter, right? So one example I'd give there is Owen Benjamin created a word designed to trigger lefties about Muslims. He just said, no. I'm just going to call all Muslims muzzies. It in no way, shape, or form is meant to be disparaging. It simply describes who they are and is just shorthand for Muslims. I'm just going to start calling them muzzies. Right?
Is that kind of like I'm not gonna say because I know Twitch TOS is trigger happy with it, but kind of like trying.
Look, I'm gonna have this fucking conversation, and if I get a fucking 3-day ban, we have yet to receive one. So I'm not gonna dance around shit when I'm intending to have a conversation because the conversation needs to be had. Right? I'm not doing it to insult anybody. I'm doing it for the context of education and talking about this, so that we can understand what the limits of free speech are and understand what is right and wrong morally. And if Twitch or somebody wants to fucking come at me for it, I doubt I'm gonna get permabanned on my first fucking offense when I'm saying things that are not designed to specifically target or demean any one individual. So we're just going to dispense with that. If you choose not to say it as an individual, I personally understand that, but Mark and I are the ones taking the real risk here. That being said, so Muzzy's historical context, right, is designed, right, for 2 purposes. It is designed to be unoffensive in the literal sense, right? In the sense that he uses it both positively and negatively, right? And Casimir, relax. But at the same time, it's also designed to trigger lefties into thinking it's a slur, to laugh at them so that when they get offended by it, they can then say that it's not a slur. And this is so my question is, what matters? Is it the perceived offense, right? Is it the kind of socially agreed upon perceived offense, which is a second category, right? Or is it the historical usage of the word? Does that have some merit here, right?
It's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And how to use it? Let's say if somebody called me Ruski or Ivan, would I be insulted?
Or Ukraine J.
It's an ethnic slur. I wouldn't probably be insulted because I would be like, that's some weak troll game, my man. That's really weak.
You gotta step it up, right?
You gotta step it up, yeah. You gotta
fucking Ruskies. I've never heard that and felt like that was offensive. It almost seems comical every time it's used.
It sounds endearing, if anything.
Yeah, it almost seems like a jokingly jab at somebody.
Yeah, buddy.
What if we start calling you like the Ripper of Rostov?
Is that a serial killer reference?
Of course it's a serial killer reference.
Oh my god.
Of course it's a serial killer reference. Yo, hold on. So Mark, I'm going to try and schedule a one-on-one with you.
Oh.
For you. Apparently Doobie is equally, if not more, knowledgeable on serial killers and is obsessed with them. And I was like, dude, you two have got to have a serial killer stream. He's obsessed with podcasts. He knows them by names. He knows how many kills they have, like all of that shit. And I was like, dude, I know someone that is equally as obsessed as you. And I was like, and it's my co-host. So
like, nah, there's no way. I probably know more than him.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. I was like, maybe, but like, I think that. So I'm gonna try and schedule a 1v1 with you and Doobie, the owner of the biggest fucking politics Discord, and make an event of it so you can do a 1v1, and finally you can be in the lead for a stream, right? And I can sit back and moderate. No, like, dude, we'll just go there. Doobie will.
Sit back in shock and horror.
Yeah. And if I have to mute, I'll mute. Like, I'll have the stream deck here and be ready to hit the button to immediately trigger an ad and emote only chat while I fucking take down the stream and re-upload and fucking unpublish if we have to, right? You know what I mean?
Debate even be about? Like,
it's not a debate, like just a discussion on serial killers.
I'm
not asking you to debate him. I'm just asking you to like have a conversation with a Twitch famous person that also happens to be equally fucking interested in serial killers.
It's gonna be a wild night.
Which I still don't understand why you guys are so into it.
Right.
So should we discuss maybe the actual like the topic?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just it popped in my head.
Linguistics.
Yeah, so I mean, I just wanted to like get that out there, but before we get to the actual topic, Wellspring disagrees that it's an ethnic slur, and I would love to hear his argumentation before we get into the banning and whether or not we agree with the ban, why we have some conflicting values in the bans about how social media censorship looks like, corporate influence, what can private and what should private companies do, et cetera, et cetera. Before we get into all of that, right? I want to hear Wellspring's argumentation and maybe push back a little bit, or maybe I can be convinced because, like I said, I'm of two minds on this.
Apparently we're just... Well, go on.
Okay, so a slur, when we want to define something, a definition consists of a genus and a differentia, right? You first take the genus, which is the category which encompasses, it references some other definition or some other category, but the differentia is the set of properties which differentiate it from that base category that you've chosen. And when choosing the genus, you want to choose something which is essential. So you need to examine the essentials of what the thing that you're defining is. So we look at a slur, and we say, let's say we want to call it a disparaging remark or an insult.
Hey, real quick. Chat is already like, okay, words I don't understand. Good start. If you could, like, I understand that you're like, it might take you a little bit longer, but if you could dumb it down for everybody, myself included, I would appreciate that.
Because I've had this
I've had this conversation before, but for the chat, if we could maybe dumb it down just a little bit of explanation of terms first. I apologize for interrupting your train of thought, but just people are already getting lost.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So a definition is a reference to some category of objects, and then a statement of what differentiates the thing that you are defining from that category of objects. So if you want to define, say, I don't know, a chair from a table, you would say that it's an article of furniture. Furniture there is the category, or the genus is the category, the base category, and then you say it's an article of furniture which you can sit on. And if you want to differentiate that from, say, a table, you would say a table is an article of furniture which you can rest objects on, and it will support their weight. The genus is the basic category to which it belongs, and the differentia is the further set of statements you make about it, which differentiate it from that base category of things. And when you are defining something, you want to choose a genus which encompasses the greatest number of essential elements. You want to choose a category which contains, the full set of essentials, and then, you then differentiate it based on those essentials.
Right. So we might start with an insult, and then move to slur.
Yeah. So and so we look at slur, and some people are saying it's a disparaging remark or an insult. Sure. If you define it there and stop, then there's no difference between a slur and an insult. But clearly, we use the term slur to refer to something different from just a general.
Racial. We said racial as like the you combine it with racial slur most of the times, and when you just say slur, it means colloquially like a shortened reference to actually racial slur. But so we don't need these semantics. It doesn't matter why it happened. I can even
Casimir.
Slur is a racial slur.
Casimir. Let him make his argumentation before attempting to pick it apart.
I agree that when we say slur in common parlance, we are dropping the word racial in front, and what we really mean is racial slur. That has become the general use for it. So I think Casimir is right.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what he's saying. Okay, so what was I saying? Yeah, I was pointing out that, obviously slur, as used in common parlance, when we say slur, we mean something that has extra properties or perhaps diminished characteristics, either added or diminished characteristics from an ordinary insult. And what is the essential? So, okay, is it just when you use an insult which is specifically targeted at a racial group or some immutable set of characteristics? Well, we do have in our common parlance a way to say that if you refer to, say, the LGBT community, you could be using a slur against them, and there are people who might argue, I take no particular position here because I don't know, that, for example, transgenderism or even homosexuality is not necessarily immutable. There are people who would argue that, but those same people who argue that it's not immutable would in many cases agree, though, that there is a way to use a slur against the LGBT community. So even those people would implicitly then acknowledge that the slur being targeted against an immutable characteristic is not essential to the definition of a slur. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what is essential to the definition of a slur?
I might have an answer.
Sure, Casimir.
You're not done? Sorry.
Let him. I know it seems like gish galloping, but we're not in a debate. We're in an open form of.
My idea is that something that's immutable, right? There is such a thing, but there are things that are close to immutable. Like, let's say that you decide to transition, whatever. That's not like considered by that community a light decision. It's something that's from now and for the remainder of your life, that's going to be your characteristic. So yes, it changed once, but it became sort of fixed. So we can sort of skip that around that. We don't need to hang up on that, right?
Mm. Well, I would say that trans people would say that they were always one gender trapped in another, and that is the immutable characteristic. Not necessarily the physical body that they inhabit, but their identity as a woman trapped in a man's body. Now they are a woman still trapped in a man's body, but doing the best to transition that body into a more comfortable place of which they feel in alignment with their psychology and their identity.
Hmm. And so I think that the social justice group, the social justice crowd, they tend to say, well, the thing that is truly distinguishing, the essential thing that we observe, is that when we are looking at a slur, the thing that we are willing to almost universally define as a slur is when we find that there's a particular word or term that is used against some group, but that word is used to put them down in a sort of in a way that a group with more power uses it against that group with less power. And I think they're approaching something there, but they're perhaps not, putting their fingers on what the actual essential thing there is. Right? I would define a slur as it is a word that is specifically targeted at a group which has been historically mistreated in some way. It has been in action mistreated factually in the past, or even ongoing in the present. And this word serves to to uh, to to demarcate, to indicate to the audience surrounding the event that's occurring that I am applying this label to this person here to let you, the bystanders, the people standing around here, to let you know that the treatment which goes along with this term, the treatment that is the mistreatment which is applied to that group, should be applied to this person here, right? And so I wrote in chat, in the general chat, I said, this is what I typed out when I was thinking most cogently about it, trying to put it down into words. It is specifically directed at a group which has been marked for mistreatment in some way by broad consensus, and the slur acts as a marker to signal to the audience that I am suggesting to you that the mistreatment which has traditionally accompanied this group should be applied to this person. So that's the first thing which seems essential to me. The second thing which seems essential is that it usually, though not necessarily, refers to a person based on an immutable characteristic. But that's not essential. It's semi-essential. So I would say that, so I guess I defined what I think the essential is, which is, it's a way to demarcate someone, sort of dog whistle in a way, to demarcate someone for a particular line of treatment. That may not necessarily be a physical kind of abuse. It could also be a degradation of the person's reputation or standing in the situation. So, for example, if you're standing, if you are in a particular environment, like a work environment, and someone calls you a certain word, it diminishes your standing in that group. It could cause reputational damage. It could cause you to lose out on opportunities, that sort of thing, right? It hints to the group that a certain kind of treatment, a certain kind of positioning, and a certain kind of regard, but the treatment is perhaps more important, should be applied here. Now, so furthermore, I wrote, a slur is not just an insult. It's a tacit, subtle call to action, or at minimum, it serves to remind the target of the slur that the mistreatment that accompanies the slur could become imminent. So, if even in a case where there's no audience, and so it's not a call to action in that case, it could also, let's say, if you are in a situation where it's just two people in a hallway, and you see, say, a gay person, right? And he pisses you off or whatever, and you all are having some kind of disagreement, and you decide to call him the F word. You could, given different contexts and based on how you are posturing yourself around him, you could be trying to remind him that, for example, gays have been, physically abused. Gays have been run out of, different social venues. They have in certain countries use a slur like that, and you could be implying that, I might call you the F word publicly and insinuate that you are gay. and that might cause you to suffer actual physical abuse. People could swarm around you and begin abusing you, that kind of thing. So you're reminding him of the imminent threat that this word could pose to him in a way to sort of to cow him, and to remind him of his place and what could happen to him.
So question, under your definition, you would actually reverse like the exact Uno reverse me, right? On the differentiation I was making between we'll say the C word if it's so important, but I'd fucking cracker and white trash, right? Because cracker has no basis in any type of historical or like the only historical basis it has is one of a position of power over black slaves.
Actually, no. There's actually like a etymological possibility that it might come from what people from the north of England would call people from the south of England who were being discriminated in England back in the 1800s.
Okay,
So
well,
that's also a
if that's
possibility.
the case, but people wouldn't even understand that, right? But
Which is why I don't know. I personally,
I
think
mean, I
that's
think the
an argument, but we
understanding
can
might-
go down that road.
But with white trash, right? Like white trash has specifically been used as a means of white people targeting other white people of lower socioeconomic status and denying them, entry into certain things, denying them opportunity as a means of attacking like kind of, like their reputation as like too poor, too uncouth, too uneducated, too, not willing to fit within our society because we are your betters and you should know your place.
If that's the definition of white trash, it matches perfectly with the American definition and sort of the American source of the word cracker. Because in this entry in Wikipedia, which we know is a liberal academic bastion of reference, which it is, it's fine, we just recognize that, right? It says right at the start that it's a racial epithet directed towards white people. I don't like that, but used specifically with regard to poor rurals in the southern United States. And they reference 1783 as one of the first pejorative uses in the United States, referring to convicts that were brought from Great Britain to Virginia, and the convicts probably indentured servants, so people who were treated, very, very poorly historically. People who were forced to work, and I'm not going to use the analogy, but it's very, very actually close. Like their quality of life wasn't the best, let's say. So yes, it is not a later in order to sort of improve the term, progressive started referring to it as the crack of the whip or something like that, but that's a false etymology.
So I think I'd like to finish off.
Yeah.
And so, so the reason I wouldn't say that cracker is a slur is, as Scott identified, when I call a white person a cracker, that white person doesn't, recognize that there's a potential that the person, that me calling him a cracker is me engaging in a potential, subtle baying to the crowd that, I'm trying to suggest to them a particular line of abuse or demotion that should occur right now. Number one.
How?
Number two.
How? It's very obviously doing that.
So interestingly, it might. So we might all be
I
right.
haven't
Like
even finished talking yet.
My bad.
Go on.
And further, the second element I would say is I would see the argument that as postmodernism advances, and it seems as if there is some very strong, mistreatment of whites on racial grounds now. I think that as that continues to advance, there will come a point where you can say that white people do have a legitimate reason to fear that, and at which point, calling someone a cracker or something like that would signal that you're trying to ask for a particular set of, mistreatments to apply to this person. And I think that is becoming a reality increasingly now.
Maybe it's because my social situations have been predominantly online and in academia, in colleges and dealing with stuff like that. But like, you know, when you say like it's not a call to action towards anything, the immediate thing I think is anytime anyone has ever used that word, it has been designed to silence that person. It has been designed to take everything that they are saying and say, because of their immutable characteristics, we can ignore their argument. I can ignore everything that you are saying. Like that is how it's usually used in the context when people use it in a disparaging way. It's always like, well, you know what?
Shut up.
Why should I listen to you? Shut up. You don't have a right to speak in this area because of who you are. You don't like we're speaking about this topic and you're nothing but a white person and white people's opinions don't matter now. Like that's usually how that's used, right? I mean, so it's more specific, you know what I mean? Because that, but I don't know, like, and that's why I interrupted you and I apologize for interrupting you. But I was like, when you said like, it's not a call to action or any of those things, I'm like, fucking how? Like every time I've ever heard it in a mean or disparaging way, it has always been a way to silence me and to get the audience and everyone around me to immediately dismiss whatever it is I'm saying and ignore my arguments and ignore my speech. You know, it's not necessarily a call to, let's say, violence against me usually, right? It's not like a historical call to that or something, but it's certainly a call to ostracize me, to silence me, and to call me lesser, and to remove my ability to have equal standing within the room or the discussion that I'm in.
Absolutely, yes. I will respond to this, but I've been talking a long time. I want to reserve my spot to respond to that point, and I'm going to see time now.
Yeah, I personally have witnessed I want to say it, cracker being used against white people before they're being attacked by somebody, or before an altercation occurs or something like that, and they will use it in the matter of shut up cracker, and then the fight would happen or something like that, and it's used as a way to escalate violence sometimes against somebody of the white race.
Well, I mean, I guess
I've been called
the
that.
basic argumentation that I hear from other people, right, often involves an implicit understanding of how a reasonable person responds to it in whether or not they are offended. I mean, I don't think that actually is pertinent. Don't roll your eyes, right? Because it's pertinent to the discussion. I don't think it's pertinent, right?
I think it's silly.
I think it's silly too, but I do want to engage. Like, do we all agree that doesn't matter here? Because I hear that often. Right. Like, even in the debate we had last night, Problematic Pan was like, well, yeah, I don't think that's offensive, and any white person that is offended by that word is just fragile. And I'm like, okay, well then I should say the same thing about the N-word to black people. And then it's like, okay, like, you know what I mean? Like,
they wouldn't like that.
No, they wouldn't like that.
Whether I'm offended by something they say is deeply personal, right? And I don't think it's sort of relevant to the conversation. What is relevant is their intention, right? And whether the platform wants to condone, or whether should be consequences for their intentions and what they act. So let's look at this. There is a core element, and then there's words are you like Wellsprings accurately said. There's a core meaning, which is a call for action, potentially a call for violence, a reminder to you that you are a sort of a person that should be targeted, and that's the essence of what we're talking about. And then there is the gishgal of the sort of the Mote and Bailey argument, where they start saying, oh, no, we mean it in the historical obscure meaning that nobody even remembers right now. No, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter if they call us. Interestingly, the word white is perfectly fitting within his definition of what a slur is. The way they say white, whitey, cracker, all of those words, they say that in a demeaning way to group everybody together in a group and to attack that group. And when we was it a month ago or less than a month ago, we had a certain violent action that targeted people, very likely by their skin color, by the choice of venue that was attacked. I don't think it's crazy to say that um, close to 8 years of this escalating and 4 years of this being like prime time, where on Twitter, the recent New York Times hire Asian lady that's said all of these disparaging things, all of these calls.
Yeah, I remember that. She was a Times, but her Twitter was full of things, and then people literally just took all of her usage of the word like cracker and replaced it with black people, right? And they were using sock accounts, and all of these accounts were immediately banned, right? But like Twitter had no problem because it was against white people.
Now, one part of my heritage is related to other, minority groups, and in the high school, I was educated to sort of detect. We were educated on how to prevent the next, big genocide or big, we should learn from the past in order so that we will never forget. Yet never forget was the thing. And what do we not forget? We don't forget the gradual escalation of dehumanization that leads to violence. And we don't need to look at like the world wars for an example. In the 90s, we had Rwanda. Rwanda started out by the Houthis and the Tutsis disparaging each other on various media channels.
Well, the military, and Mark will back me up on this. The military uses specific language to dehumanize people in order to make war for soldiers more palpable, right? So they're a target, or they're an insurgent, right? Well, it's like, okay, well, what the fuck is an insurgent? Someone that inserts themselves in a region that they are not invited to. So like American soldiers, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously the Taliban, what they do is they roll up in fucking like little fucking dirt bikes in their convoy and shit. And then they hand a radio to a guy and they say, I'm going to rape and murder your wife if you don't hop on this bike and report what the American soldiers are doing. Right. So obviously the term insurgent, effectively applies to the Taliban. Because it's not like they're just like hanging out in a village that just happens to be a Taliban village, right? Like they're fucking terrible people. But that being said, we don't call them people, right? We don't even call them their group name. We call them a target. We call them an insurgent. We call them some name that is based off of the behavior that they're doing, as opposed to in any way being able to identify them as humans, because it makes it easier for us to kill them. Right? So I think the same applies to ethnic slurs. But that being said, Wellspring, did you want to push back anymore before we get really more onto the topic of free speech, platforms, companies, etc.?
So I think you talked about you encountering situations, and generally almost every situation where you've heard the word cracker used against you, it was used to silence you and other you. I want to push on that one. So I want to point out that the adoption and the evolution of terms like cracker, whitey, so on, maggot, and all that among Black people was in an insular way and an insulated environment where, so to speak, we used to discuss these issues amongst ourselves, and something very unusual in this started happening when I was around 12 years old. It was just around the time when Justin Bieber came out, and then hip hop began to become really universalized, right? And along with that, all of these Black discussions and these discussions that Black people used to have among ourselves about our issues became out in the public domain, and all of a sudden, Black issues were being discussed as national issues and as a public issue, whereas this is something we used to just gripe about among ourselves, and white people didn't really take it on. So that's been a big change, right? So these terms which were used among us, like I might say something like "fuck these crackers" or whatever, talking to other Black people, or even with a white person around, sort of letting him know that I'm not trying to invite you into this conversation. This is me talking to someone else here, and you're not invited to comment, right? And that's sort of the way that was used sort of prior to, I just think of it as prior to Justin Bieber and then after Justin Bieber. That's the way I kind of think of the eras of this particular change.
Not that Justin Bieber has anything to do with it. It just happens to be the way you remember
Yeah.
it.
So in the context of the pre-Justin Bieber era, when somebody might call you a cracker, that's just a sort of an indication that you are not sort of what. This is not an issue where it's of your concern, so to speak, and kind of please butt out, that kind of thing, right? So that hey, listen, I understand that you're a nice person and I like you and all that, but just okay. This is not your business, so to speak, and you're right in recognizing that that's how it was used against you. But in the post Justin Bieber era, where postmodernism, began to push the black struggle out into the world. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry for laughing. It's just find it funny calling it post Justin Bieber era.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You can mute your mic and start making the memes immediately.
Sorry.
In the post. So in that post Justin Bieber era, where black people and their issues have been pushed on everyone, now that and policy, actual public policy began to be decided on the basis of these issues, a black person can no longer tell a white person that you can't speak about black issues, because that's unfair to that white person, because policy is being decided on the basis of these issues and it's affecting him. So in that kind of context, where you are silenced from speaking up about this kind of thing, you are right that in that case it would be an exclusion from your right to speak on something which affects you, and that would be, I guess, what you're trying to get at in the post Justin Bieber era, and that's probably what you're referring to there. But I want to make sure that we point out that these words were carried over from the pre-Justin Bieber era into the post-Justin Bieber era without a proper examination. And so, I don't know if that helps in any way with ensuring that we sort of understand that these words, cracker, even though you experienced it that way, it wasn't really a slur in that context as such, because it still wasn't sort of a reminder of a context of abuse which could be applied to you potentially imminently.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I grew up in 1990, right? So, I mean, that's when I was born, 1990.
Mm-hmm.
The world that I've always, I mean, you're referring to this period of time where, like, this wasn't already beginning to happen in the 90s. Like, the world that I live in, at least, and maybe this is because you're not an American and we exported all our racial identitarianism and shit and postmodern kind of philosophy and stuff out of America to you guys. But this shit was occurring in the 90s. So the whole time that I've grown up throughout my entire life, that word cracker, right, has been used as a means of silencing me, has been used as, I mean, like, so I grew up in a predominantly black school until middle school, right? And this, so, I mean, I grew up as a child hearing that word used at me to attack me for being white and to kick me out of social interactions with my peers and to isolate me and to make me feel different and not have power. Like, I have always heard, I mean, like, and I'm a free speech absolutionist, right? So I think, we'll get to it, but I think Twitch shouldn't be banning people for this. I think it's a stupid thing. I think Twitch should just shut the fuck up and allow people to kick people out of their chat if they want to. If you don't like that shit, don't fucking go hang out in their stream. But that being said, right, and like, we'll get into the more details of that, but maybe it's because you're not from America, and maybe this has been happening longer in America, but for my entire life, even as a child, right? I mean, I'll tell you a personal experience, right? I was on a school bus. I was called that word, right, because I refused to get out of a seat, like legitimate Rosa Parks moment. I was on the back of the bus though, and the back of the bus was fucking where the cool kids sat, right? And the front of the bus is like where the nerdy dumb kids sat. But I got to the bus early and I sat in the back of the bus and I was like, and I plopped my back down, right? And this is a predominantly black school, and I had two people say, "You're in my seat." And I said, "Well, I don't see your name on it." And he says, "Get out of my seat, cracker." And I tell him, "No, go fuck yourself." And then I got jumped by 5 people that decided to all beat me up. I got black eyes, almost broke my nose. If I'd have been older, I probably would have had a broken nose, but we were all elementary school kids. They were kicking me. They were beating me. Those people then said and got 2 people to say that I said the N-word, which I never did. I was then punished and suspended from using the school bus for the rest of the year, and they received nothing, right? Because they had accused me of saying the N-word, despite me never having said that, and they admitted calling me a cracker, and my, at the time, black female vice principal laughed when I even said the word because she thought it was hilarious that they called me a cracker, and then I was punished pretty severely, more so my parents than me, because my parents then had to change their work schedules to try and figure out how they were going to get me to school because they had banned me from the school buses for an entire year. So that word was used to racially it put me down and to attack me, and then the N-word came up, which I never said, and they used that as a means to justify all of the violent behavior that they did towards me, and all of the violence was acceptable so long as a couple people said that I said the N-word.
I witnessed a similar situation, by the way, in a
but I'm just saying, like, maybe it's because I'm an American and this racialized kind of power and all of this shit has been around a little bit longer because of the history of slavery in America and because of the postmodernist influence has been here since the fucking 60s, right? So like maybe my experience with that word is a little bit different than yours as someone who's currently living in Australia. You know, like that's the only pushback I would have about that, because when you say like, oh, post Justin Bieber era, I'm like, my earliest memories are of that being used as a means of silencing me, of reducing me, of ostracizing me and trying to hurt me. Not that I'm particularly offended by it, but I'm just, yeah, I mean, it's basically a hate crime with assault. Yeah, Kung Fu. Like, that's what I had as a child.
It's a hate crime.
I have to respond here, but I'll reserve a slot.
It's sure you can reserve. So I just want a quick quip. I think that what you described is horrible, and it's classical textbook racism and racial violence. Okay,
100%.
supported by and promoted by the state because it provides them power. Okay, it's very, very simple, and don't ever let anyone like try to slide it or anything else. They'll be like making a denialist argument.
And like I was saying, I've witnessed a similar situation. I personally myself, I mean, I went to a majority black school, and you know, guess what? I'm white passing. So a lot of people would target me based on the color of my skin, and you know, sometimes they wouldn't let me play basketball or something. And then they found out I was Cuban, and they'd be like, "Oh no, you're Cuban, you're cool," and then they'll let me play. And at that point, I was like, "No, you go fuck yourself. Now I don't want to play with you, you fucking racist piece of shit." And I would get into fights because of things like that, because I was like, "No, I'm not dealing with this shit," you know. But I mean, I'm not surprised that this kind of things happen to, like, you know, like that Scott, because I've witnessed something very similar, and I couldn't do anything about it because, you know, I tried, but you know, I'm not gonna get into that. That's a story for another day.
Wellspring has reserved his spot. All right, you must yield your time.
Yeah, so in response to Scott's described scenario, so I can see that definitely in that situation, there's a strong element of them having called you cracker in order to bay to the rest of the people around that, you know, they should prepare themselves to apply a certain defined set of mistreatments to you. So
I mean, then they literally did, because it was 2 people and there was 3 other people uninvited and completely not a part of the dispute in any way, shape, or form that engaged in beating me up.
Yeah, so that was definitely the use of a slur. And moreover, I want to talk about the way that you said the supervisor, the principal, responded. Um, she laughed. Um, I would characterize her laugh as being either um, negligent or malevolent, depending on what her understanding of what happened there was. So if she was laughing because she thought it was absurd that you were trying to categorize cracker as a slur because she didn't see the use of cracker there as being a way to apply a label which connotes a set of behaviors and treatments, then she was just sort of laughing at the idea that it was a slur. But if she was laughing at what happened to you because of the application of the slur, and she understood fully the context and the way that the situation played out as a result of the application of that slur term, then that's very malicious and vicious. And
Yeah, I very much doubt the first one. An element of that may have played out in the first one, but this is me sitting in front of her to be punished while having 2 black eyes and bruised ribs and in pain as a child. So like I like, even though I'm telling my story and she's already heard the other people's story, which was that I said the N-word and they decided to beat me up for it. And so she felt some level of solidarity that I needed to be punished for that, which on its face is already absurd because they didn't deny beating me up. And they didn't even lie and say that I threw the first punch. They said, no, we beat him up because he called us the N-word, which is just not true. But even if that were the truth and she believed it wholly, like I very much, and they also didn't deny saying, so they got to speak to her one-on-one, or not. I mean, I guess maybe she was interrogating them because a kid got beat up. I don't know. I wasn't there. Right. But they spoke to her one-on-one. Then they spoke to her as a group. Then I was brought in, but I never had a one-on-one experience with her. So, I mean,
So
when
you
I
had to
said
tell
that they
the
saw,
story in front of all of them.
yeah, I had to tell my story in front of the people that beat me up.
Jesus Christ.
Yes. And then when I said the C word, right, when I said that they called me a cracker, none of them denied it, right? They were like, yeah. And then she's laughing, right? Like she's like, so I'm sure she's laughing to some degree to the absurdity of it because maybe her life experiences don't see it the same way that I was seeing in that situation. But there's no denying that she already knew that I had been physically beat up and that I didn't throw the first punch. That's the most charitable interpretation that you could possibly give her of her view of the events, right?
We don't have to. We can do the least charitable interpretation, which is the most likely.
I'm in Virginia.
Which is in Virginia. She has tribal affiliation, like many people do, and in certain people, this overshadows their rational behavior. And it's the very same thing that people who fought against racism in the South were frequently pointing out to, which is the good old boys system.
Mm-hmm.
Our good old boys beat up this stupid kid who made the mistake of antagonizing them in any way. What that stupid kid should learn a lesson for the rest of his life: to bend the knee, to kneel, to submit, because if he rebels against our good boys, what will happen once he grows up and he starts rebelling against us?
Right. To be fair, I do want to put this story in full context. I had a white principal who came in and saw that all of this was bullshit and gave me a permanent seat on the front of the bus and stopped after I think it was maybe less than a month. He came in and was like, because he was unaware of the situation, my parents went to him like, you have to fix this. And he was like, holy shit, what happened? And gave me a permanent seat on the front of the bus, was the compromise, but I was still punished and they weren't. But I was I didn't have to not have a school bus ride the rest of the time. And I was basically forced to not be allowed to sit on the back of the bus. I had to sit on the front of the bus so that I could be next to it's literally the reverse Rosa Parks. I'm not allowed to sit in the back of the bus. I have to sit in the front of the bus as a white guy. But yeah.
Back then, in Rosa Parks time, the back of the bus was the bad. In high school, the back of the bus is the cool part.
was that same way in elementary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was very weird to me because, you know, when I got to middle school, my parents moved into the suburbs. Not a great house in the suburbs, not a great neighborhood, but a decent neighborhood. And I went to a predominantly white school, and it was like offsetting and weird to me. And I tried to hang out with black kids, and they didn't want to hang out with me. And I was like, what? There's so many white people here. I had a come to Jesus moment. Like, oh, America is predominantly white. Like, because in my world, it was just mostly black kids. You know what I mean? The neighborhood I grew up in. I originally grew up in the projects, and then, you know, in an apartment complex in the ghetto, and then, you know, and then the suburbs in a fucking nice little white town.
Did you eventually have to hang out with white kids in high school, or did you have?
I was in show choir. Like, come on. Of course I was hanging out with white kids. Yeah. I didn't really hang out with anybody or not hang out with anybody. Like, I was infamous. I was one of those people that just kind of hung out with different groups of people at all times. Not because I was super popular. I was like equally hated by people, and like everyone had an opinion on me in high school. Like, they either hated me or they were like, this guy's hilarious, I love him. I was popular, but in many ways infamous, because a lot of people hated me. Like, a lot of people.
So it's a bit of a side note,
we became the back of the bus.
but I just wanted to push back. I just wanted to push back on that and say, like, I don't know. My experience is probably different than others, right? I don't want to say that it's normal that a lot of white people in America have experienced racial hate crimes for the color of their skin. I have. Right. And so, like, this argument where people are like, you don't understand what racism is like. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what it's like to be a black dude in America. I don't. But, like, to say that, you know what I mean? Like, to say that these things aren't an ethnic slur because you're white and you have some power or something, like, which is the standard kind of argumentation. It's like, I don't know, man. That's not the experience I had. That's not how I grew up.
It's the classical.
I'm gonna say I think I have Hispanic privilege.
No, stop.
Sorry.
Casimir interrupted Wellspring, and then you interrupted Casimir.
So I want to talk about the power argument. I think that when a lot of times when people aren't able to properly essentialize their definitions, they end up using definitions which are inadequate and which skew the meaning of what they're trying to get at. So when they talk about power, what they're really talking about, what is power, right? Power is the ability to unilaterally cause an effect. The ability to unilaterally, by your own capabilities, without having to reference anything else, to bring about a particular desired effect.
Right. Or at least influence.
Absolutely. So ultimately, what they're really trying to talk about there is, in that context, you know, white power versus black powerlessness, so to speak. They're trying to talk about the ability for white people to use the slur to apply a label to someone, and then to invoke or evoke a series of effects, which would be some kind of abuse or mistreatment. Ultimately, what they're really trying to get at is the fact that the label applies a series of potential concomitant abuses. And so I'm pointing that out because we have already in our conversation put our fingers on the correct definition then, and we've been able to pierce through the veil and see what they mean when they're talking about power, right? It's just the ability to evoke a series of effects by use of the label. So, you know, when you just say power without you mischaracterize the argument in certain ways, and it might be a good idea to potentially talk about, you know, applying concomitant effects, maybe.
All right, so I want to let Casimir speak, and then Lucas speak, and then I will say something.
It sounds like what they're doing is sort of the argument you hear from Holocaust deniers, which is, oh no, didn't happen, no, but we wish it did. Like, oh no, it's when we use the word white, it's not a slur, or the C word, oh, it's not a slur. but we so want to hurt you, and we applaud and celebrate every time you're hurt as a group, and we treat you as a group even though you have so many distinctions. Like, this whole point was, I remember being in the tolerance courses in the 90s when it first started, and I took them in as like sensible things. They taught us to detect intolerance, taught us to detect the escalation towards genocide. Very noble. Okay, let's apply those lessons. Applied those lessons. It doesn't mean, we know the intention. They are telling us the intention. They're literally performing stochastic terrorism, and actual terrorist actions happen.
We've agreed.
And celebrate them and ignore them.
We have agreed to change it to stochastic violence. All right, Lucas, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the joke that I was gonna make is that I kind of have like a little bit of Hispanic privilege, because when people would attack me for being white, I'd be like, "Calm down, papi, calm down," and they would leave me alone.
Hi, Poppy.
I'm sorry, Mr. Damiano.
I'm sorry, Mr. Damiano. So I'll say this, Wellspring. I like your definition. It is the best definition I have seen. The only crux or issue that I have, and I would like to move forward to more interesting, meaningful portions of this conversation that nobody else on Twitch is really having. But I will say that maybe it is, I want to reiterate, I think you may be right in terms of the usage of the term cracker outside of the United States in the historical experience, maybe. But I think certainly within the United States, I know from my own life experience that cracker meets every single portion of your definition that you have presented.
On Twitch, Vaush and Hassan, you think they use it innocently like in Europe? Really?
No, I was just gonna say that Andy's right. We should make Latinx a slur, because it's definitely used by people in a position of power. You know, white lefties against Hispanics, right? Because they're trying to imperialize our language. Okay, fuck white lefties that are trying to destroy the Hispanic language.
Yeah, but it's not. But that doesn't meet his definition of a slur.
It's fucking Latino or Latina or Latin.
You can be mad about it. You can be offended by it, but it doesn't meet his definition of a slur.
No, I'm not offended. It's just fucking annoying.
That reminded me of the thing I was racking my brain for something that I wanted to comment on. You all talked about offense. You know, whether or not this a slur. You know, I think you were trying to add to the definition that a slur, or you all were referencing someone else's definition, the wider definition of a slur being based on whether or not the person takes offense. And I just wanted to push on that, but it's just me repeating the fact that, well, we have a definition here which, you know, does get at the essentials, which is it's not about whether or not the person is offended. It's about whether or not the person has reason, you know, factual reasons to believe that the use of this term puts him in potential danger of some set of abuses being applied. Mm-hmm. And that gives us a more objective way to look at whether or not something is used as a slur in your context.
I only brought up offense, and I think it's only been talked about tangentially here because I wanted to iterate the fact that I took issue with someone like Problematic Pan on last night's panel saying that we can dispense with this word because he's not offended, and anybody who is offended is just thin-skinned, right? Like that I was saying whether or not it falls into the category of a slur, offense has no bearing on this. I
wonder what sort of background does he come from? Because I've noticed that there is and I might be wrong on his case, but I've noticed there's a difference on how white people that didn't grow up in the ghetto or didn't grow up in like a mixed area or something like that. I noticed that the way that they react to the word cracker is different than it is for somebody that grew up in a mixed or ghetto or.
Does anybody know who this person is? In Discord?
Who?
Person that just joined and then went into a room.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, I don't know. They're not in a live stream waiting room. They're in chill chat, so I assume they're just chilling. But
they have the politics server in common with you, so I don't know.
Right, exactly. If they hop in a live stream waiting room, maybe we'll bring them in. I don't know. Yeah, so I want to shift this now. and talk about what I think is more important, because I don't think this is being I don't think anybody really discusses these types of things unless you're in libertarian circles. Maybe thanks Logic Rex for the follow. Maybe in anarchist circles. But I want to talk about the idea of banning in and of itself here, right? I want to talk about the idea that it looks like they quit the Discord. I want to talk about the idea of like, does anybody agree with the banning? What, how do we feel about a private company banning? How do we feel like they should be doing for their business model? Society, censorship, and the entanglement or enmeshment of large social media platforms in the state. Does anyone want to begin?
I don't agree that Hassan should be banned for saying cracker is not a slur. I don't think it's a slur. And moreover, I think that, well, I don't know.
Well, I mean, he was
Maybe
banned for
everyone-
attacking people using the word.
Oh.
His mod was banned for using it to attack people, and then he doubled down after his mod was banned. So his mod gets banned for doing it, and then he gets pissed, and he starts calling people crackers.
I think he's based. I think he did that. I don't think he is based. I think what he did there was based. Yeah, that's my position on that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, depending. I mean, base has now become a fairly watered down term that is kind of like meaningless at this point. But I get what you're saying.
Well, yeah, that's all I can really say on it, I guess.
Okay. I take it.
Hold on one
bit of a
second.
different.
Well, I mean, you don't have to
Wait
hold
for
on. I
you.
just mean I'll be right back.
Oh, okay. So I have a little bit of a different position, and I'm kind of taking this. The best way I can explain it is I would look at it the way that Proudhon looked, for example, usury. He respected people's rights to usury, but he personally didn't approve of it morally. I see calling people slurs or offended or just trying to be offensive and be a dick the same way. I think you should have 100% the right to do it, and I would prefer if private companies don't engage in censoring. However, I personally don't want to. I just try not to use that kind of language against somebody because I don't want to hurt people. I cared about people, you know, and I don't think people should be using it. However, I don't think Hassan should have been banned. I still disagree with what he did in a moral way.
What do you think, Kaz?
I think that, so first, the optimal situation.
Mhm.
If you are an entrepreneur who is about to establish some network where you're going to provide a service for others to establish communities on your network, please use my model that I'm going to recommend. Establish a market for an API where other people will perform the censorship for you, so that people can, at the flick of a button, move from one sensor to another sensor without changing your platform. That would be the most convenient for us, okay? Sort of like if Discord wasn't involved in politics whatsoever and just allowed everybody to hop from server to server the way they like. Or, if the filter, instead of having one YouTube filter and one Twitch filter that's centralized and centrally planned, I would want that to be not centralized and to be decentralized and to be many different groups offering that service on the market. That's the optimal solution.
What do you think about Minds?
I don't know, but I just want to focus on the current question. I don't know how Minds works. Sorry.
Minds. If something gets reported, right, then what Minds does is it sends out 12 different people, right, the video, and then what it does is it sends it to 6 people that have been on the platform for a long time and have a lot of engagement, and then the other 6 are just random, completely random, and then it allows them to judge, and if 9 of them agree, then that's how it gets taken down.
It's better than most of the current systems,
Mhm.
but it's still misguided. because what I want to choose is I want to punish the censor because I'm the user and sort of my data is being used and I'm the client supposedly. So if we're the clients of the system, what I would want, if let's say I pay for Nitro or I pay for Twitch Prime or any of these, what I want to get in return for my money is the ability to say, this censor is now no longer my friend. I'm now friends with another censor, okay, that will do a better job. Today, for example, exactly. So today, like, I trust the Google algorithm to censor for me, but tomorrow their algorithm goes haywire, and at the flick of a button, I combine several other algorithms
I can
that are on the
explain.
free market will
Yeah.
allow me to choose them. Sure.
I think
Hey,
I can
hey, no,
explain-
you don't.
Go on.
Please don't explain a point someone's currently making.
No, I thought you were done.
I'll wrap up really quick because I want to talk about the specific ban. I am against the ban in general because I think it's an absolute joke. So both Hassan and Vaush and the Read Army and all the other extremist channels on the platform have said and promoted policies and ideologies that are far more offensive to me than the fact that they're racists.
Yes.
Fucks,
Yeah.
Okay. So I would want them, if it was my community, they would be asked to leave a long time. But I don't think that we can trust Twitch. We don't know what motivated Twitch to act. Is it corporate interest because they're now sort of cracking the whip? That was not intentional. At the people who are attacking corporations. Maybe Amazon is kind of like, well, they played their role in the election, and now we have to, get them back into line. These anti-statist, anti-corporatist types. Okay, maybe that's that, or maybe they just had a crazy day and they decided to be, or maybe it's a lawsuit that they expect to be sued, and they want to say, oh no, we're banning leftists as well. Okay, there's many reasons we don't know. We shouldn't know. We can't trust them. It's too hidden, too secret. So, in some sense, I'm with Wellspring. If I'm in Hassan's position, I show them the middle finger and I try to go to another platform potentially. But I hate Hassan, I hate Vaush, and so it's hard for me to not celebrate them, getting a taste of their medicine. But I realize that's a foolish feel. If you're feeling, I empathize with everybody who is gloating. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. But realize it's a foolish feeling because we never know what goes inside the big corporation Twitch.
You know what it reminds me of?
Decision.
I'll be quick. It reminds me of who's that senator? That guy that ran for senator in Texas, that also ran for president. The young guy that was super big on gun control.
Beto?
Yeah, Beto O'Rourke. Right. It reminds me of Beto O'Rourke being like, oh, so the Texas heartbeat bill allows civilians to sue people based off of certain actions, and the Supreme Court substantiates it. That's cool. I'm going to do the exact same thing with gun legislation. Right? And when I see that, I see the left being like, oh, Beto, you're so amazing. But also, I still think it was morally wrong what they did with the Texas heartbeat bill because that's not constitutional. And it's like, how do you hold these two things together? And then the right is like, oh, I'm so glad the heartbeat bill passed. And then they're like, how could Beto O'Rourke do this against guns, right? It's like you have two sides. You have this schadenfreude of people being happy that Hassan and Vaush are punished because they're dumb lefties that they hate for good reason, right? Except they're celebrating them being punished on the platform for TOS violations of certain words that they're using. And this is coming from the same camp that is constantly bitching about online censorship, rightfully so. So it's like you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, to sort of the way they describe it is that they recognize that it's absolutely ridiculous that they got banned. The reason why they're gloating is because both Vaush and Hassan were supporting the censorship and were saying, "Oh,
wait, was it Gavin Newsom? It might be Gavin Newsom. I haven't looked into it. Heavily.
I'm pretty sure that maybe Vaush got smarter on his like second or third ban, but before his very first Twitch ban, I'm pretty sure if we roll the tapes back enough, okay. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be willing to wager on that. He gloated at other people being removed, and was saying, "Oh, private company, private business," and all of the typical stuff that you hear from them. Okay, so to see the people who are being gloating at this awful tyranny of this, potentially state-funded corporation, whatever it is, and then to see them suffer under their own tyranny, under there's certain good in it, and I recognize it's a stupid feeling. Don't do it. Don't do it for too long.
Yeah, I think the question here is the problem I have with with this argument, right, is that the libertarian perspective is that the private company should be able to do whatever the private company wants to do. But we also live in an age where censorship is an ideal that we should rail against, right? Even if it is legally done, right? The ideal of free speech is something like, I think anarcho-capitalists and things like that, there's a bit of conflict between freedom of speech and private property rights, right? I mean, like
it's a little bit, but the issue is that this is not a libertarian issue right now. So they're protected under Section 230, which libertarians don't accept.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, like, you should be able to, I mean, without Section 230, Hassan or Vaush could very easily sue Twitch for a breach of their contract, because the contract didn't explicitly show that cracker would be a term that would be utilized here. No one reasonable before this occurred would have assumed that just saying the word cracker was obviously a violation of their hate speech policy, right? And yet they're creating financial losses to these people. And I would say that Twitch is in breach of their contract, but because of Section 230, right, we're in a situation where they're protected in censoring people, and they don't have to worry about the financial consequences of that.
I don't want to get too technical in it, but maybe we should open the section and read it to people, because most people don't understand what's going on. It's not about repealing Section 230. Clarence Thomas opined on this, and he said it's written clearly enough. It's just that the lower courts never interpreted it properly, and none of the cases made it to the Supreme Court yet in a way that the Supreme Court can respond. So the issue is the otherwise objectionable and the Good Samaritan provision. The Good Samaritan provision allows a publisher, a platform, right, a non-publisher entity, somebody who's not liable for any of the content posted on their site, allows them to still moderate, to remove blatantly illegal activity. That was the intention of the law. It was to remove porn, remove, CP, remove all the objectionable things. And then, unfortunately, the legislators wrote, or otherwise objectionable. And what the big corporations did is they took otherwise objectionable and say, oh, we object to everything in the universe. And the Supreme Court would have said, like in other cases, no. There is a clause that is part of a sentence that implies the intent of the flexible clause. It's like, why would the lawmakers make a list and then make a flexible clause that encompasses the entire universe? No, you should read that clause the way the other, parts of that sentence are read. And there was a similar argument in the impeachment trials, similarly, okay? So we know how the Supreme Court will interpret it once it gets there, and we know their Section 230 is not the problem, it's the
it's the lower court's interpretation of it, and the fact that a precedent hasn't been set, right? Because if I'm banned for the usage of the word cracker, I should be, even by the law standard, I should be legally allowed to easily sue Twitch and say, look, I'm making this amount of money per month on Twitch. Whatever that money is, right? This is my average income on Twitch. Here is my growth on Twitch. Here is how my growth changed based off of that. And here is how much funds I lost in subscriptions and donations and ad revenue, right? So this is how much I'm suing you for, right? Because
you would be sent to arbitration, though.
Yeah,
super accurate. You would be sent to arbitration.
Yeah, terms of service allows me to go to arbitration, but even still, an arbitration would obviously side with Twitch. Sorry, what?
We're not sure, actually. There were cases that were either or.
I would say probably not. I would say arbitration actually has an incentive to go like after Twitch. Are we talking about
No.
private arbitration? or
No,
are we
we're talking about it's literally in your contract.
It's Twitch has a contract, and most of them have. This is funny. It's a bit of a side comment. I don't know if I should go too deep into it.
Don't go
There
deep.
was,
Just say it. Yeah.
Okay, so in I think it was one of the social medias. Patreon had a clause for arbitration, and the clause was that they had to arbitrate every single individual claim. So
Yes.
somebody realized that, and like thousands of people started making claims against them, and
Yes.
they calculated the amounts of money. It was like, now we owe $20 million for arbitration. Oh no, let's eliminate the arbitration clause. And the judge said, only for people, only post facto. You can't amend the contract in the past.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Sargon of Akkad was pushing that real big.
It was an amusing moment.
It was an amusing moment, yeah. So a bunch of people brought arbitration and enforcement. But yes, so your contract forces arbitration. That being said, right, that doesn't mean that you can't go against that contract, right, and say that it's an unconscionable contract, which it is. It's an unconscionable adhesion contract, right? The idea that every person is supposed to be a legal scholar and be able to understand that, and that they're supposed to go to arbitration paid by Twitch, that is completely incentivized to. It's not a third party fucking arbitrating firm that has no fucking binding on it, right? Like the only thing they have to lose is their reputation to a certain degree. So they're much, much more likely to side with Twitch. And it's not fair, right? It's not like you and Twitch drew up a contract and then picked a company that's involved in a bunch of other stuff as like the arbitrating firm that you wish to go. So you could still technically win a case as an unconscionable adhesion agreement, and then go forward with your suit in the judicial system of the United States, circumnavigating the arbitration. But
If somebody wants to tell us that like some lawyer is watching this and saying these guys are full of ass. Fine. We might be completely wrong, but we should have the right to test. And the fact that the government steps in and says, no, you're not allowed to sue this private entity, so they can have all of their profits can be privatized, as the socialists like to say, but all of their losses are protected by the government and are public losses, private gains. This is actually happening, and so
right.
we should
and
be on
so
the same
this
side
is
here.
this what we're talking about here is the important distinction between this idea of, they're a private company, they can do whatever they want. Censorship is not a problem. They are supported and protected by the state to censor us, right? Yeah. And that goes beyond the CIA having a $600 billion contract with Jeff Bezos, right? The fact like that, so that Twitch can share your data, right? So Jeff Bezos has a contract with the CIA to make sure that all of your data that you put into Twitch is shared to the NSA and the CIA, right? So this is a lot of money. 600 billion is a lot of fucking is a big chunk of change, right? So when you say, Twitch is a private company, they just happen to be getting $600 billion from the Central Intelligence Agency to share all of your data with them, right? So Twitch is not a private company. Twitch is a partially nationalized institution of the state, protected by the state and funded by the state. It is a socialist company, and so they do not have the right to censor you, but they have the capacity because the state doesn't give a fuck about your rights. If Twitch was a genuinely private entity that didn't have these Section 230 interpretations, we shall say, right, that allowed them to essentially censor whatever the fuck they want without you being able to sue for lost wages and things of that nature, right? And they didn't have a bloated amounts of funds from the state, we'd be in a very different situation. And this is why competitors can't compete with Twitch. It's not just because Jeff Bezos has so much fucking money, right? It's because to create a contender with Twitch, right? You're in a position where you have to host. Well, who are you going to host from? Well, you're going to host from Amazon servers. You're going to host somewhere in some shitty servers in Europe so that you can actually have free speech. Like, because
Rumble is starting to compete, but the issue is that it's difficult to when the initial growth is state supported.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it can't be done. What I'm saying is one is supported by the state. It's not just capitalism, right? One is supported by the state, protected by the state. So whereas free speech is directly attacked by the state, right? Let's look at Parler, right? Parler and the media corporations worked together to try and say that the January 6th incident was planned on Parler, even though Parler was giving them everything that they had on what was occurring and letting the state know, right? Hey, we're seeing people talking about these attacks that may be imminent, right? But the actual planning took place on Twitter and Facebook, predominantly Facebook. But it was Parler that was misaligned everywhere by the media and by politicians regularly, right? And then it was Amazon who sees a potential competitor in the social media space that revoked their servers and their right to their servers, right? And broke contract with them. And they broke their contract.
The contract breaking was the judge. The decision of the judge in that case was sort of laughable because you could read the contract and say that they had to provide them with quite a bit of advance warning. And then there's like industry standards about that, and he sort of ignored all of it and said, "Well, deal with it." And
yeah, exactly. So the state then supported shutting down Parler as quick as possible and breaching contracts and violating the law, but it didn't matter because the state wanted Parler gone, and the media institutions and the bureaucracy wanted Parler gone. Right. And so then Parler had to search for server. Now, Parler was stupid for having fucking Amazon servers to begin with. They should have seen this coming, especially when they were intentionally creating a political version of Twitter, right? Like they weren't doing something like Minds, for example, that was a free speech platform. They were doing an intentionally right-wing Twitter, basically. The fact that they didn't see this coming speaks to the stupidity of it, and the stupidity of a company a company that stupid would have failed some other way anyways, right?
Yeah.
But this is the important distinction when people say, oh, well, it's a private company, they can do whatever they want. Twitch is not a private company. It is a private company in name only. It is protected by the state, and it is funded by the state.
Now, this does not mean that we should support growth of the state to regulate Twitch.
Yes.
For sure.
Make that clear, because conservatives would go and they would run and they would say, yeah, that's why we should make a law that says that Twitch cannot ban free speech. No, that is not the solution. The solution is to remove the protections that they get from the state. That is the solution.
Yes.
It's like it's such a common mousetrap. Everybody on Twitch, all the socialists are like, oh, we can solve this problem with the state, make the state even more powerful. Man, that's why we're here in the first place. Don't you understand?
Wellspring, I wanted to shift the Wellspring, I wanted to shift the I don't know why you're typing this in chat. Greetings from Argentina. Investigate Javier Milei, Libertario, ANCAP Argentino. Okay.
I know who Javier Milei is. I've actually watched his stuff. He's the guy that ran in Argentina that I was telling you about.
Yeah. Albergine was talking about him.
Yeah, Albergine was talking about him.
Yeah, Albergine and you and I had a conversation about him. Interesting cat. So the reason, Wellspring, that I shifted the conversation intentionally here is because we're libertarians, we're ANCAPs, most of us, right? And I think this conversation is sorely missing a really important element about censorship. The right is talking about it happily that they got censored, or a few of them are principled enough to be like, well, they shouldn't be censored, because free speech good, right? And the left is talking about whether or not it's a slur. And if they think it is a slur, then they're like, well, you shouldn't be using those slurs. And if they think it's not a slur because they've propagandized themselves with too much CRT, and they think it's not a slur because of power dynamics or whatever, right? Then they're railing about how this is unfair that they're banned because, it's not like they said the N-word. And what most people are not talking about is online censorship in the context of private entities and the context of what we should do and the context of how free speech should be applied and things of that nature. So I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit. And I think we've established that Twitch is not a private entity because of all of the protections it has, because of the way that the bureaucracy and these things are enmeshed with the state. And of course, you know, most importantly, $600 billion contract between Jeff Bezos and the CIA is a little fucking concerning. Now, most of that is using your Amazon data, right? But it's also using your Twitch data. Everything that you put in Twitch chat is stored in CIA servers. You could put money on it. I'm not saying that's a fact, but I'm saying I don't think the CIA is paying Jeff Bezos $600 billion for nothing. I'm assuming it's for your information. And at the very least,
paper clips.
I was gonna. I don't know if you guys are Casimir. I know Casimir is familiar with the etymological origin of the word corporation because I know he watched the video of public versus private. But the word corporation comes from the Latin word corpus, and the idea behind corporations have been a thing since ancient Rome. And,
cool.
They were
Hold on.
I'm pretty sure.
Wow. It's not as relevant to our discussion, but
no,
like, there is an argument. There's an argument that's
sorry, 600 million. Yes.
Anything not run by a private individual and their family, which is like headed by a particular person, could be considered like a public entity or socialist, soft, like classical definition of the word entity. Well, we don't need to go that deep.
No, that's not what I was going. I was actually going on the idea behind.
Thanks to the follow, Botasac.
One of the arguments that Tick was making in the video. I'm not going with that one. I'm going with another one. Is that corporations become the corpus or the body of the state because they get help from the state. They get subsidies. They get protections. They get benefits. All those stuff. So they become by de facto the corpus or the body of the state. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah. Of the state within a corporate system as any other branch of the state.
Yeah, I mean, you're peeling back another layer, which is that the fact that Amazon and Twitch are a corporation in and of themselves is already a level of state afforded protection, right? The idea that they can take financial risks that companies wouldn't necessarily take because they know at the end of the day they can walk away with billions of dollars. What Casimir? Are you okay?
I'm watching in chat. It was really funny. Something was amusing them, I think.
Yeah, I know. It's just like it looked like you were watching a funny cat video. All of a sudden, you were just like,
"Sorry."
No, you don't have to apologize. I was just like, "You good, bro?" Yeah. So I mean, the thing is that I think the right answer here is to remove these protections and to get rid of this censorship. And, you know, I think we should rail against censorship in all of its forms just because of the idea in and of itself, right? Like, even if it isn't a rights-based thing. So let's say that it was a private company. Twitch was a private company, right? And they in Section 230 was fixed and all of those things. And they still wanted to censor. That should still be an issue to many of us, right? Because we should value our free speech.
Well, the way we should respond to it is by advocating for other people to leave the platform and to go to another one.
Yes.
Which is like the ANCAP approach. And in fact, we should say the top right now, the number one coding project for freedom is a project that will allow users to migrate communities as easily as possible. The issue we have, and the reason why we don't have good service providers on the market that provide us with as much free speech as we want, is because we can't migrate as easily. Everybody's complaining about it. It's like, why are you still using, this service or the other service? Oh, because all my friends are here and because it's too much of a hassle to switch. But there is a great demand in the market for a sort of switching service, for a service to disconnect your data from all of these different providers and create a sort of network where your data can migrate. some people like Rumble are actually providing you with that as part of their service, meaning the billing and the user data is localized to you.
Right, but what we really need is a decentralized interface that connects you to all of your social media platforms, right? And also other people use this same decentralized service or a different one, right? That when they follow you on YouTube, they're already following you on BitChute. They're already following you on DLive. They're already following you on Twitch. So that when you get banned from Twitch and they search for your name in their interface, or they want your content and they say content pops up, then they get notified on the platform that you're on right now. Right. Yeah. There should be a decentralized or intermediary interface brought to market that allows me to follow someone and follow their YouTube and follow their BitChute at the same time. And so that there's no actual change to me when they get banned from YouTube, because I still get notified of their latest video and I still watch their video because I have an interface that says, you know, Vaush just went live on DLive. It usually and they get to set what their preferred platform is, right? So Vaush sets his preferred platform as Twitch. I get a Twitch notification that he's going live. He gets banned, and the next day that he goes live, I never followed him on DLive. I never interacted with DLive or anything, but it pops up and says Vaush went live on DLive. And then I click it and I go watch it, and I find that I'm automatically following it because I have this service. Like that's what that's what we really need is an intermediary service that everyone can use so that they're automatically following people in all of their socials, and they're automatically notified, and they're automatically given an interface to go watch them or watch their content. And then I think overnight, if this is widespread, you will find that people will be using Odyssey or things that they might be on Odyssey or Rumble or Twitch or DLive, wherever they are, right? But the effect of the censorship will be very minuscule, because yes, if I'm browsing Twitch to see who I want to see, I won't see Vaush on Twitch. But if I'm using a notification service, what's that?
There's a bit of an issue. Something like that was already tried back in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And the social media platforms changed the algorithm to detect that kind of activity as a bot and ban or block, or like, you know, if you had that kind of service, your account would get for a time you would get like suspended for like a week or something like that, and then they would warn you, and then eventually they will remove your account if you did it multiple times. So that has been tried before, but they won't let you do it because it's not in their self-interest to let you do this kind of stuff, and the state also supports them, so it doesn't allow for real competition to search. So
there's got to be ways to make this work though, right? Like
they're going to stop it. He's right. Like this, I heard something like this was attempted before. They're going to keep trying to stop it. Eventually it will happen. Like, just there's no way to control the data. It happened before. Like we had, like, how did they stop all the other decentralized networks? They tried. Once they were centralized, they could stop them, but everything they try to stop, there's 10 times more of it right now.
Right, and that's what I mean is you connect this with a decentralized network, right? So you create your own website, and that's where you stream from.
I'm gonna plug one service that's really good. There is so you might not like Gab and their service, but they have a really nice browser that's nice to have on the side, which is the Dissenter. And the
Center's nice.
How can we fuck over
the main feature is
poor?
that you see comments on every single website, even the websites that don't have comments.
Yes.
Brilliant feature.
Yeah. Well, I got Dissenter. I got Dissenter. I got Dissenter when it came out because it allowed us to comment on YouTube page videos where they were deleting comments or where they were had disabled their comments. And the best thing about it is you could go to news stories that were breaking, and you'd read a CNN article, and then you can still do this if you have Dissenter. I haven't updated it. I had it. I stopped fucking with it. But one of the things you can do now I just use a news aggregate because I do this, like, you know, I bring news to you guys like deeply and heavily. But at the time when I was too busy to do that, you could go and read a CNN article, look at the dissenter comments, and someone would be like, this entire article is bullshit because this claim is wrong. Check out this link for additional information on the story. And then you click the link and it's like a right-wing outlet or something that's reporting different facts that CNN is leaving out. Or whatever.
Which, about some of these features, so it's a good comment from chat. YouTube removed the dislike button. Unfortunately for them, there's already like at least one plugin that you know brings it back up.
So I want to show you something, since most of you guys probably aren't YouTubers, right? Let's go to content.
We get to see it, right?
I'm going to show it on the screen here in a second. So I'm going to show it on the main screen. So YouTube said, as part of the reason that it did this, right, was to protect the creator from seeing all of the dislikes and there being like a mob of people disliking their videos. Correct?
Yes.
Why is your hand raised? Say something.
Okay. The reason this actually happened, and this is just conjecture, okay? I don't have any proof of this, but it's such a coincidence that it happened right after all the dislikes and hate that Star Wars was getting after they banned Gina Carano. It was such a coincidence.
This happened. It's not a coincidence. No.
It's not only because of that. The top reason why it started happening, which was it was planned for months, because when a certain alleged president came to power,
yes, it's the White House.
Every single video of his was getting ratioed by like 1 like for 10,000, 100,000 dislikes, and the White House had to disable all of those, but they can't by law because they're obligated to display feedback for several lawsuits. And so eventually YouTube sort of pitched in and said, we'll cover it up for you guys.
So I just want to show you guys why this entire thing, I'm going to move this over so that, dang it. Stop it. All right. So that you can see that this is complete and utter bullshit. The idea that you're protecting the content creator from seeing the likes and dislikes on their videos is an utter lie, because as you can clearly see, all of this information is on the creator has all of this information still. I know that, let's say this video, Curb Your Joe Lewis, has 25 likes and not a single dislike. I know that this video, clapping Joe Lewis for being a clout chasing bigot, has 24 likes and 3 dislikes. I know that my CRT discussion with Spectre has a copyright claim. Of course it does. And I hope they copyright it. Has 12 likes and 1 dislike. 25 and 2. I know that this video has 7 likes, no dislikes, 16, 1 dislike. So the idea that you're protecting me from looking at my videos, right? Like if we look at where's the racial homogeneity video? Here we go. Like, I know that the racial homogeneity video has 126 likes and 9 dislikes. I'm not protected in any capacity by not seeing this information, as I have all of this information available. So they blatantly lied about why they did it.
Do you think that other than the political staff, they could have done it because of like snowflake watchers or like audience members that didn't want their favorite content creator was getting hate, so they just did it partially because of that too? Or you think it was purely because of the state influence?
In what way do you think YouTube gives a fuck about the offense of people?
If people don't use their platform, they leave. They lose money.
No, if people get offended, they stay on the platform.
Right around the same
The data
time,
shows that offended people stay on YouTube. the madder you
Right
get.
around that time. They were colluding with the state right around that time because they found out that there's links between all this social media and the I think it was the California DNC who were talking to them directly. So they're not talking like to the the DC crew, but they're talking to other local crews directly. I'm pretty sure they're talking to the DC crew. We just didn't find out about it because the leak hasn't showed up yet.
Right.
But yes, they're talking directly. Trust me, they do. That's what they do.
So we know that censorship is a problem, and we should decry censorship. And this idea that these are private companies and institutions is a complete farce. They're state-supported, state-sponsored, and financially state-sponsored, both as corporations and often with many financial benefits, as well as, you know, a certain enmeshment, like Twitter, for example. You know, how many politicians are on Twitter? How many politicians are on Gab?
Yeah.
You know, part of that is because it's a larger platform, but what, is there any meaningful communication occurring on Twitter?
Obviously there is.
Like, of course there is.
Oh,
What
you-
percentage?
I'm saying like I think you mean like between politicians and Twitter. My bad. But yeah, but like when in general on the platform, I don't know, less than 10% probably.
Right.
Maybe even less than 5%.
All right. So does anyone want to say anything else on the Vaush Hassan ban? I think we have a good
No.
definition of a slur moving forward. I think that the distinction is unimportant. I think you ought to be able to slur as much as you want. I think you ought to be able to scream the N-word at random people that come in. And I don't think Twitch should ban you. I think I think people should just be able to block you and not watch your content.
I am of the opinion that I want to know who the fuck is racist, so I don't have to associate with them.
Right.
I want racist people to show their faces.
Actually,
I want that.
And
What-
contained, yes, within their own channels, yes.
Wahoo Sam actually asked a very important question. Do dislikes and likes actually matter in YouTube's algorithm? Do dislikes push videos down in any way? It is the exact opposite. Dislikes count as engagement and make your video more likely to be seen by more people, because YouTube knows that if people take the time to dislike a video, that they're hate watching and that they're more likely to stay engaged on the platform, and that YouTube is more likely to gain money. So dislikes actually help people's videos.
Fuck yeah.
So when
what you're saying is that
if you really dislike a video and a content creator, don't dislike their video. Simply don't watch it. Just stop watching it and go to a different video. As a matter of fact, the worst thing you can do to a video is begin their video very quickly and then close it and close out YouTube completely. And then don't go back onto YouTube for an hour or two. Because what YouTube will say is this video caused the person to barely watch it. It will fuck up their watch time. And it will add markers on it that say that because the video was bad enough, or because the video was unentertaining in any way, that this person decided to go do something else, and that YouTube lost money because of the video. So the best way to actually dislike a video is to close out the platform completely very soon after starting the video, and then pretending that you're bored of YouTube and go do other things, watch a movie. And that is way, way more effective. The worst thing you can do is dislike a video and watch the video.
yeah. There you go, guys. That's a guide on how to be a hater.
There's the secret sauce.
That's the secret sauce to fuck someone up in the algorithm.
I have a message for, to conclude this sort of topic maybe, I have a message from Persia. About 1,000 years ago, this guy wrote, what Lord is fit to rule, but truth, not one. What beings disobey his rule, not one. All things that are such as he decrees, and naught is there besides beneath the sun.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.